Hi class. So we are going to do the chapter about star finding. I introduced to you the one day that Thursday that we got the announcement that school is going to be out for a number of weeks, and then I decided to move away from that and do the galaxies. And I kind of already introed a lot of this to you, so I'm not going to do all of that in at least as much depth. And I'm kind of pare this down. It's kind of an awkward chapter to do online, with the distance learning. But we'll do the best. It'll actually, I think, be a little bit easier for you guys. So I think that'll be good. So this is just, the rundown of some of the things that I'm going to want you guys to know. Basically, just how to find some of the more important stars in the nighttime sky. Big and Little Dipper, circumpolar constellations, some of the bigger stars. Quickly, we know that all the stars, that Polaris, the North Star, is the only star in the sky that does not move. All the stars do circles around it, like we see here. It's zipping right around. We call that the North Celestial Pole. There's just another view of the same thing. If you remember, if we find the Big Dipper in the northern sky, that's really easy to find, the Big Dipper. Then use the we call them the 2 pointer stars. Call these two guys the 2 pointer stars, and follow those to find Polaris. And Polaris connects to the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper and the Big Dipper are, of course, parts of 2 constellations known as Ursa Major for the Big Dipper and Ursa Minor for the Little Dipper. Big and Little Dipper themselves are not constellations. They're what we call asterisms, which is just like kind of a less formally defined grouping of stars. So Big Dipper is part of Ursa Major. Little Dipper is part of Ursa Minor. So we can use Polaris. So again, the first thing is we use these 2 stars to find Polaris. Polaris is at the tail end. Okay, the 2 dippers are kind of pouring into each other. And again, the Big Dipper is just doing circles around the North Star. Like all the stars really do. But the Big Dipper and Ursa Minor is one of a handful of constellations we call circumpolar constellations. Those that never rise or set. And we see that here. So we see the North Star. They don't have the Little Dipper in this picture. This would be the end of the Little Dipper. Then each day, the Big Dipper does this one time, indicating a full rotation of the Earth. And this is all, of course, because the Earth is rotating, not because of the stars. And the North Pole is the North Pole because the North Celestial Pole just happens to be pointing to it. As I mentioned before, this will not always be the North Star. The Earth's axis has a tendency to wobble, and so it will move all the way to another part of the sky, later on down the road. Again, Polaris always tells us which way due north is. Also, the altitude of it tells you your latitudes. Right now, if you look out the nighttime sky, which I always highly recommend, you will see the North Star 41 degrees above the horizon. So halfway between 0 degrees is the horizon, 90 degrees is directly above you. Halfway would be 45 degrees. A little bit below halfway is 41 degrees. And that's how high the Polaris is for us here in Westlake, Ohio. Now, that also tells you your latitude. That's your degrees of latitude on the Earth. So that it would get higher and higher in the sky as we went more and more north. It would get lower and lower in the sky as we went more and more south. In terms of degrees, I showed you guys a demonstration of this in class the other day. But in terms of measuring degrees, a fist like this is 10, kind of with a fist with the 2 fingers extended is 20 degrees. So you could just do 9 of these to go from 0 to 90 degrees, so from eye level to above you, or about 4.5 of these should get you from eye level to right above you. So like 2, a little over 2 of these, so put your pinky between your eye and the horizon and your thumb, and then stack 2 of them on top of each other, and that should tell you about the altitude of the North Star in our nighttime sky. Okay, so in all the classes, I think it was the last Thursday that we were in class, we went through this. It was that first day after the test over stars we did. We went over this. And we were supposed to do that chapter initially, but again, this chapter is not as ideal for doing over the computers as some other ones. But I do want to do this, and I'm going to go through this now. Okay, this slide right here, okay, there's a slide of stars I want you to know going to the north, and another one of going to the south. So first off, find the Big Dipper. Okay, Big Dipper, really easy to see in the sky. Big Dipper right there. Okay. These two stars point to Polaris. That's the North Star. Okay, so right away we found out this star, or this constellation, that is Ursa Major, and within Ursa Major is the Big Dipper. Then once you find the North Star, that points you due north, and that gives you the Little Dipper, which is part of Ursa Minor. Little Bear, Big Bear. As you may remember, okay, now we can use the Big Dipper, because it's so easily seen, to help us find some other stars. Now, the arc of the handle of the Big Dipper, it's an arc, it's a curve. If you follow that arc, you're going to find this really bright star we call Arcturus. Follow the arc to Arcturus was the easy way to remember that. Okay, and then Arcturus is in the constellation Boötes, that funny word. I said, yeah, it looks like you spell booties out there. And I think booties just kind of looks like a big butt cheek. All right, kind of silly, but easy way to remember. Okay, so follow the arc to Arcturus in the butt. Booties. Again, actually pronounced Boötes. Kind of looks like a little kite. If you see the full picture, it looks like more of a balloon with the little balloon knot down here and the kite up here. So follow the arc to Arcturus. Arcturus is an arc, just like a butt, a booty would be, and that's how to remember that Arcturus is in Boötes. Then you continue following the arc down till you spike it down to Spica in the constellation Virgo. Okay, only way I remember those, Spica is just 5 letters, so is Virgo. Okay, Spica in Virgo. And then you spike that arc down and it finishes there. Okay, so now we have 4 constellations we've learned and 3 different stars. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Polaris, Arcturus, and Spica are the 3 stars, and Virgo, Boötes, Ursa Major, and Ursa Minor are the 4 constellations. Again, just refer back to this slide. When you look at the slideshow, this is pretty much everything we need to know in the kind of like northern east sky. The only other one on here is, okay, so you have these 2 pointer stars that go to Polaris, but if you take the other 2 stars in the cup of the Big Dipper and point them in the other direction, that will point you to Regulus, which kind of connects the body of Leo the lion to its head. So here's the big mane of the lion's head, and this connects its body, and there's like kind of the hind quarters of the lion. And I always think, Regulus kind of sounds like regal. Regal is kind of a word that means stately or very proud, much like a lion. Okay, very stately and kind of beautiful and just kind of very powerful looking. That is what the word regal means. So I think regal, Regulus, Leo the lion. Lions are regal, and so Leo the lion is in Regulus. So now we have another star in another constellation. We have Leo, Virgo, Boötes, Ursa Major, and Ursa Minor. Polaris, Arcturus, Spica, and Regulus. Okay. Spica is 5 letters, Virgo is 5 letters. Arcturus, arc, like a butt. A butt, another name for butt is a booty, which is kind of what this weird word looks like. Big Dipper is in the Big Bear, Little Dipper is in the Little Bear. Ursa Minor, Ursa Major. Leo, the regal lion, is in Regulus. Regulus is the bright star. Leo the lion connects the body of the lion to the head of the cat. So if we skip over to Starry Night here, you can kind of see some of what we talk about. Okay, here's the Big Dipper. Okay, here's this evening around 10 o'clock tonight. Today's Thursday, by the way. Here's the Big Dipper. It's kind of upside down. It's kind of in a pouring position. So follow these two stars out from the opening of the Big Dipper, and you find Polaris, the North Star. Here's the Little Dipper, much dimmer than the Big Dipper. So if you're looking at the screen, you can't help but miss the Big Dipper. If you can find the Big Dipper, you can find all these other things that we just said. Okay, so Big Dipper here. Okay, so here's the Big Dipper. All of that to here. Here's Polaris. Now in this view, you know, we can find some of the other stars that we mentioned. Let's scoot the screen over a little bit. So we follow the arc to a really bright star. Boom, really bright star. And sure enough, we see that is Arcturus. Do I need to know the exact outline of what the constellation Boötes looks like? No, of course not. Follow the arc to Arcturus, arc like a bus cheek, constellation Boötes. Okay, so there's Arcturus. Keep following the arc until you get to another bright star. You'll see this little blue star here, and that is the star Spica in the constellation Virgo. Spica 5 letters, Virgo 5 letters. And both have 2 vowels and 3 consonants. Another way to relate the two with each other, if you want to really get specific with it. Follow the arc to Arcturus, and then keep following it down until it spikes down into Spica. Spica in Virgo, Arcturus in Boötes. Okay, and then the hardest one out of that side, from the stuff to the north, is that, remember, just like we followed these to find the Polaris, we follow these two guys to find Regulus. So follow these two guys in the opposite direction until we get to Regulus, which should be this guy right here. Okay, don't confuse. Here's another bright star, but we don't care about that. It's not nearly as bright as Regulus. And so Regulus is up there, and we can see another kind of bluish-looking star in this view. It's actually really high up in the sky. Different times of night, it might not be quite as high in the sky there. If I click on the drawings here, it's maybe a little bit easier to see. Is, again, maybe take them away for a second, and then I'll put them back on. So take them away. Again, there's your Big Dipper. Everything's based off the Big Dipper. And then we turn them back on really quick. Okay, and there you see the Big Dipper. And here's its bigger structure, Ursa Major. Put the labels on so we can recognize. Okay, so follow these to the North Star. Here's Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper. Here's this, follow the arc to Arcturus in Boötes. Again, Boötes kind of looks like a deflating balloon. Here's the balloon knot, and here's the deflating balloon. Or some might say it looks like a kite, would be another way to look at that. Follow the arc to Arcturus and Boötes, and continue following it until it hits Spica, which is in the big constellation Virgo. Then going back to our Big Dipper here, follow these two pointer stars the other way until we get to Regulus. And we see Regulus connects the body of the cat. Here it's kind of turned sideways. If I turn it this way, here's the cat. Here's like the head of the lion. The head connects its body to its tail. So it's probably not going to try and not move the screen around too much, because I'm sure that that's a little confusing for you, or disorienting at least. Okay. If we were to view this a little bit earlier in the night, things would be rotated a little bit more that way. Okay, but the same rules apply regardless of what time of night that it is that we are talking. And remember too that we speed up the sky, everything is rotating around this. So all of these constellations here we deem circumpolar constellations. Sorry. Circumpolar constellations. So you can see as the time changes, how quickly the sky moves. It's the only star that doesn't move, but Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Draco, Cepheus, Cassiopeia, Lynx, Camelopardalis, these would all be deemed circumpolar constellations. So I'm going to let this rotate forward a little bit and show you one other thing that we can maybe be useful for you, is that you notice here that the Andromeda constellation is rising. I'm going to turn off the daylight really quick so that we can continue to see what this looks like. So it's daytime, that's why the sun is up now. But notice, so here you have the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper. Kind of opposite that is this W shape called Cassiopeia. See this little W here? Okay, that's Cassiopeia. And I'm going to take these labels off just for a second so you guys can see. But this little W, this is a pretty well-known constellation as well. It's a circumpolar constellation. Cassiopeia, the Queen, is what that is. Now, over here was the constellation Andromeda. It's called Andromeda because the Andromeda galaxy is right there, M31. That is Andromeda. And that is the largest structure that can be seen with the naked eye, and is also the furthest away structure that can be seen with the naked eye. Again, I guess you're somewhere with a really, really clear sky. You're probably not going to be able to see that, but you can actually see Andromeda with the naked eye. And you see that right here, okay? Now, if we zoom on that, so I always say, find this W. Again, it's kind of opposite, so go to Big Dipper. It's kind of on the opposite side of the Little Dipper from the Big Dipper. Find that W, and this W, the point of this W, points down to Andromeda, right in there. And if we zoom in on that, and we zoom and we zoom, we can see that that is an entire galaxy. Okay? An entire galaxy, not too much unlike our own. And you see this other dwarf galaxy that it has orbiting it. It is this small dwarf galaxy that's orbiting the Milky Way galaxy. That's not one of the Magellanic clouds that we talked about last chapter. Those can only be seen in the southern hemisphere. But again, this is that structure that is composed of hundreds, billions of stars. And here's another one that's a smaller dwarf galaxy that's actually orbiting this galaxy. And again, you can see these types of things. Those are just out there in the nighttime sky. This is 2.4 million light years away. This is a supernova remnant. If you saw this up here, some people asked about that. But here's Cassiopeia, that W down, so just below that, you can find M31, otherwise known as the Andromeda Galaxy, which we did talk about kind of at length. So again, there's Andromeda. Andromeda is also a constellation in our sky, kind of named after that. It just the label here happens to be right over top of the galaxy. But that's something I like to ask too: is what do you find right off of the point, the W of Cassiopeia? You can find the Andromeda Galaxy. Okay, so that's pretty much all I really want you guys to know in the northern sky. Again, one last time, and that'll be it. Is you have everything's in a little bit different orientation now. Let's maybe get this back into nighttime so you can see what it might look like if you're outside at night at nighttime. Big Dipper, North Star connects to the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor. Follow the arc of the Big Dipper to Arcturus. Really bright. At this time, Arcturus is going to be really low in the sky. Then follow that. A little bit later in the sky, you'll see a little bit below. Follow the arc. Zoom out just a smidge here. Follow the arc to Arcturus in Boötes until it spikes down in Spica. Spica 5 letters, Virgo 5 letters. Arcturus, arc like a butt, which looks like the word Boötes here. North Star, Polaris, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major. Last one's on here. Follow the other two, so these point this way. The inner two pointer stars point the other way to bright star Regulus. Regulus is a blue star right in the middle of Leo here, and it actually kind of looks like a line. Unlike most of these things, it actually a little bit looks like something. So Regulus, remember, is kind of a blue star, as is Spica. And again, these are all the brightest stars in their constellation. Okay, there's countless numbers of dim stars out there that we don't really need to know for our purposes, okay? So that's it for the northern sky. Also remember what it means to be a circumpolar constellation. That would be all of these guys that just do laps, do circles around the North Star, never rise, never set. And like we just said, Cassiopeia, here's another constellation I want you guys to know. Cassiopeia, shaped like a W, like a crown. Cassiopeia the queen, that's why it's called that. It's the crown. Right off of that, right under here where the word Andromeda is, that's where you can find, see it right there, that little smudge, the entire Andromeda galaxy. So that would be one other thing. Cassiopeia, circumpolar constellation, right off of the point of that W, points right down to a whole galaxy. Okay, and that's it for the northern sky. We'll talk about stars and constellations we can find using Orion here shortly.